Welcome back to episode 7 of the $0 to Mega Farm series here on the Eldred, Minnesota 4X map. Last time around, we continued building our brand new farm from the ground up and officially got our first major opportunity to start making some serious money here in Eldred. We took on our first custom harvesting contract, giving us the chance to put our harvesting equipment to work while earning some much-needed money to help grow this farm. We headed out to this 72-acre barley field and fired up our John Deere 9760 STS combined paired with a 35-foot draper header. We also brought out our John Deere 7810 with the 2J NM 655 bushel gravity wagons so we could keep the combine moving and haul the harvested barley back to the local grain elevator. We've already made some really good progress through this field, but there's still a few acres of barley standing and we're not quite finished with this contract yet. The field has been yielding much better than I originally expected, so we've already got a pretty impressive amount of barley harvested and delivered while still having plenty left to go. The biggest thing we're working toward right now is getting this first custom harvesting contract completely finished so we can finally collect our reward and see just how much money this first job is going to bring into our brand new farm. We're still working with a pretty small bank account, so every dollar we can earn right now is going to make a huge difference. Once we get this contract finished, we'll be one step closer to hiring our first worker, upgrading our equipment, and eventually turning this tiny operation into the mega farm we're working toward. So with plenty of barley still standing and our first big contract waiting to be completed, let's get back into the field and get to work. To kick things off today, we're going to jump right back into our John Deere 9760 STS combine and get back to work on these final acres of our very first harvest here on the Eldred, Minnesota 4X map. We've been working through this 72-acre barley field for the last couple of episodes, and after everything we've already harvested from these acres, we're finally getting down to the last few passes of the field. This harvest has definitely taken a little longer than I originally expected, but that's honestly a pretty good problem to have because this field has been producing an incredible barley yield. We've been pulling a lot more grain off of these acres than I originally anticipated, which has turned what was supposed to be our first relatively simple harvesting contract into a pretty substantial opportunity for this brand new farm. We've been running this entire harvesting operation ourselves so far. I've been behind the wheel of our John Deere 9760 STS with a 35-foot draper header, and every time we fill up the combine, we've been unloading that barley into our 2J 655 bushel gravity wagons pulled behind the John Deere 7810. Once both wagons are completely loaded, we'll pause the harvest, jump into the 7810, and make another trip into town to get that barley delivered to the local grain elevator. And we've already crossed a pretty important milestone with this contract. Last episode, we delivered more than 7,000 bushels of barley to the local grain elevator, which means we've gone well beyond the amount the farmer originally expected us to deliver. That means everything still standing in this field now belongs to us, and that's a pretty exciting point to reach because we're no longer just harvesting for someone else. We're now building up our own inventory and creating another source of profit for our farm. We've already hauled around 1,300 bushels of our own barley back to the farm, and we've transferred that grain into one of our 14,000 bushel GSI grain bins. I'll continue hauling whatever extra barley we harvest today back to the farm so we can keep building that stockpile. My plan is to hold on to as much of that barley as we reasonably can and watch the market over the next several months. If we can wait for the price to climb before selling it, we could turn the extra grain from this contract into a pretty nice additional payday. Of course, we can't hold on to it forever because our own harvest season is getting closer, and that's when we're going to have wheat, pinto beans, and soybeans coming off our own fields. With only 14,000 bushel silos available at the farm, we're going to need to manage our storage space carefully. Eventually, we'll need to sell that barley to make room for our own crops. But for now, there's no reason to rush it if we can get a better price by holding on to it. But before we start worrying about all of that, we've got one very important thing left to accomplish today. We need to finish this field. Once these final acres are harvested, we'll finally be able to officially complete our first ever custom harvesting contract here in Eldred. That means we'll get to collect the contract reward and finally see exactly how much money this first big job is going to put into our bank account. And right now, we're sitting at only around $7,000, so this payment is going to make a huge difference. We've been slowly building this farm from practically nothing, and this first harvesting contract has given us a great opportunity to turn the equipment we already own into some serious income. Once the contract is all wrapped up and we've collected our reward, we're not going to stop working. We'll get our harvesting equipment all cleaned up, get everything parked back into the sheds, and then we'll head straight over to the contract board to see what other jobs are available from the local farmers here in Eldred, Minnesota. We've still got some time before our own crops will finally be ready to harvest, and I want to take full advantage of that time. The more contracts we can complete now, the more money we'll have available for equipment upgrades, additional land, farm improvements, and eventually hiring workers to help us expand this operation. I'm also hoping that once we collect this first contract payment, we'll finally be in a position financially to hire our first worker. Having another set of hands around the farm would be a huge step forward because it could allow us to start working on multiple contracts at the same time and really accelerate the growth of this little farm. So there's a lot riding on these final few acres of this first harvesting contract. We're about to finish our first major job, collect our first big payday, and hopefully take another major step toward turning this small operation into the mega farm we're working toward. For now, though, let's fire up the 9760, get these final acres of barley harvested, and finally finish up our very first custom harvesting contract here in Eldred, Minnesota. If you're excited to follow this brand new series and help shape the future of the farm along the way, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let me know down in the comments what crops, equipment, or projects you'd like to see us tackle next. Well, guys, our very first custom harvesting contract here in Eldred, Minnesota, is officially 100% complete. After spending the last couple of episodes working our way through this 72-acre barley field, we've finally harvested every last acre and can officially call our first contract a success. This field definitely ended up being a little more work than I originally expected, but honestly, I think it was a great first job for this farm. Not only are we about to collect a pretty substantial reward, But this contract also gave us our first real opportunity to put our harvesting fleet to work here in Eldred and see how everything performs before we get into our own harvest season. We've learned quite a bit from this job, too. We've had a chance to see how quickly our John Deere 9760 STS can work through these fields, how much grain our 2J NM gravity wagons can handle, and just how much time we're going to spend hauling grain once we're running our own harvests. I'm already starting to get an idea of which pieces of equipment we're going to need to upgrade first as this farm continues to grow. But before we start thinking too far ahead, we've got one final load of barley to deal with. I'll get the remaining grain unloaded into our 2J NM gravity wagons, and then we'll jump into the John Deere 7810 and make one final trip back to the farm. This last load will be ours to keep. So instead of taking it to the elevator for the contract, we're going to haul it back to the farm and get it safely stored inside one of our GSI grain bins. But before we leave this field, there's something pretty important we need to take care of. We're collecting our contract reward for completing this 72-acre barley harvest. We should receive right around $80,000 from the farmer. Considering we've been sitting around $7,000 in the bank, that's going to be a huge boost for this farm. And that $80,000 isn't even the end of what we can make from this job, because we've also got all of that extra barley that we've harvested for ourselves. We've already got a pretty good amount stored back at the farm, and if we're able to wait for the barley prices to climb before selling it, I'm hoping we can push our total profit from this first contract well beyond $100,000. That's a pretty incredible return from our very first custom harvesting job, especially considering we're starting this series from practically nothing. Once we've collected that reward and gotten our final load of barley back to the farm, we'll return to the field one last time to clean everything up. I'll get our 35-foot Draper header dropped onto its header trailer, and then we'll start making the trip back to the farm with the combine and header. And this is where we're going to get our first taste of having a worker help around the farm. I'm going to hire our first worker to take the pickup truck and header trailer back to the farm while I drive the John Deere 9760 STS myself. It shouldn't cost us much to have the worker make that trip, and it'll save us from having to make an extra trip all the way back out here ourselves just to retrieve the pickup and header trailer. Once we get everything back home, we'll get the combine, header, tractor, and gravity wagons washed up and parked back inside the equipment sheds, so everything is ready for our own harvest season, which is getting closer and closer. And once our equipment is cleaned up and put away, we're going to find out what comes next for this little farm. We'll head over to the contract board and see what jobs the local farmers around Eldred have available. We've still got some time before our own crops are ready to harvest, and I don't want any of that time going to waste. We've got a brand new $80,000 payday coming into the bank. We've got our first contract officially completed, and now it's time to start putting the rest of our equipment to work so we can keep growing this farm. The first contract is finally finished. Now let's see how quickly we can turn this first big payday into the next step toward our mega farm. Well, we've now got everything back home at the farm, which means our first custom harvesting job is officially behind us. We've unloaded the final load of barley into one of our 14,000 bushel GSI silos, and I've also taken the time to get our entire harvesting fleet washed up and parked back inside the equipment sheds. It's nice to finally have everything cleaned up and put away, but before we move on, I want to take a quick look at exactly how much extra barley we managed to keep for ourselves from that contract. Right now, we've got around 2,500 bushels of barley, or roughly 83,000 liters, sitting inside the silo. At the current price, that barley would bring us around $18,000, but if we can wait for the market to reach its peak price, we're looking at closer to $28,000. That's a potential $10,000 difference just by being patient, so I'm definitely going to hold on to this barley for now. We've got plenty of time before our own harvest season arrives, and I'd much rather wait for a stronger price and squeeze as much profit as possible out of the grain we earned from that contract. And now that our harvesting equipment is back in the sheds, it's time to figure out what we're going to work on next. Let's check the contract board and see what kind of jobs the farmers around Eldred currently have available. We've got quite a few different options showing up right now, including fertilizing, cultivating, and spraying jobs, but one contract immediately caught my attention. We've got a 42-acre plowing contract that's going to pay us around $50,000 once it's completed. That's a pretty substantial payout, but there's another reason I really like this contract. We haven't actually done any plowing or deep tillage in this series yet, and we got the perfect piece of equipment sitting back at the farm that hasn't even seen the field. Inside our Quonset hut, we've got the Landau 2131-23 Shank Coulter chisel, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to finally put it to work. So rather than just taking another spraying or fertilizing contract, we're going to get some use out of one of our bigger pieces of equipment and see what this John Deere 9620 and Landau Coulter chisel can do. I'll get the John Deere 9620 fired up, hook up to the Landau 2131, and make the trip over to Field 1, where we've got 42 acres waiting to be ripped up. Once we arrive, I'll spend some time setting up a course-play course and run the first few passes myself. I want to get a feel for how this combination handles the field and make sure we've got everything configured properly before turning it over to a hired worker. And this is actually going to be another pretty big step for our farm because for the first time, we're going to have a hired worker handling a field contract while I go after another job at the same time. We've finally got enough money in the bank where I think we can afford to start using workers a little more strategically. Yes, we're going to have to pay the worker while they're working, but if I can get another profitable contract running at the same time, that worker should essentially be paying for themselves while we're generating additional income. So instead of working through one contract at a time, we're starting to reach the point where we can scale up the farm's workload and have multiple jobs running simultaneously. That's exactly the kind of progression I want to see as we work our way from this small operation toward a true mega farm. So let's get the 9620 hooked up to the Landau, get this 42-acre plowing contract underway, and then we'll start looking for another job to take on while our first hired worker gets to work. Well, we're now officially making progress on our first ever plowing contract here in Eldred, Minnesota, and so far everything is looking really good. We've got the John Deere 9620 with the triple tires hooked up to our Landau 2131-23 shank Coulter chisel, and this combination is handling this field extremely well. This is a pretty substantial 42-acre field, so it's definitely going to take some time to get every acre ripped up, but I'm really happy with how quickly we're making progress. More importantly, we've now got everything set up properly, which means we're at the point where we can finally start taking advantage of having a hired worker. I'm going to turn this John Deere 9620 over to our courseplay worker and let them continue working their way across this field while we head back to the farm and start looking for another contract. This is actually a pretty big step for our farm because instead of having to complete one job from start to finish before moving on to the next one, we're now able to have multiple contracts running at the same time. We'll have our hired worker generating income on the plowing contract while we're out taking care of another job ourselves. And if we can continue doing this, we should be able to start growing our bank account much faster. Looking through the contract board, I'd really like to find something that's relatively close to our farm. I don't want to accept another job that's going to have us spending half of our time driving equipment across the map, and it looks like we got a pretty good option available. There's a 56-acre cornfield that needs to be sprayed with herbicide, and it's located fairly close to our farm. I think this is going to be a great second contract for us because we've already got everything we need to take it on. We'll be using our John Deere 7810 paired with our Bestway 1,200-gallon pull-type sprayer, and before we head out to the field, I'll grab the Chevy Silverado and hook it up to our Duo Lift 1,300-gallon nurse trailer. I'll take that nurse trailer over to the local co-op, get it completely filled with herbicide, and then bring it out to field 42, so we've got plenty of product waiting for us when the sprayer arrives. Once the nurse trailer is in position, I'll head back to the farm, get the Bestway sprayer hooked up to the John Deere 7810, and make the trip out to the field. Once we arrive, I'll fill the sprayer from the nurse trailer, get the first few passes set up, and then we'll start working our way through those 56 acres. This should be a relatively quick contract compared to the plowing job, so I'm hoping we can get it knocked out without spending too much time away from our 9620. And once we've finished the spraying contract and collected that payment, we'll head right back over to the 42-acre plowing contract, check on our hired worker, and take over the John Deere 9620 ourselves. That way, by the end of today, we should have 2 separate contracts completed, 2 additional payments coming into the farm, and another step toward getting this little operation to the point where we can start making some serious upgrades. We're finally starting to move beyond just doing one job at a time, and that's exactly what we need to do if we're going to turn this small farm into a mega farm. So let's get this 56-acre cornfield sprayed, collect another paycheck, and then get back to ripping up that 42-acre field. managed to get our 56-acre herbicide contract completely finished, and that ended up being another really profitable job for our little farm. Once we completed the contract, we collected a reward of $37,660, bringing our bank account all the way up to $113,207. That is a pretty big milestone for this series because this is officially the first time we've ever had more than $100,000 sitting in the bank. We're starting to see some serious progress now. Not too long ago, we were sitting at only a few $1,000s, and we've now managed to build our bank account past that $100,000 mark by putting our equipment to work and taking on contracts around Eldred. After collecting that payment, we brought our John Deere 7810 and Best Way sprayer back to the farm, got everything washed up, and parked the equipment back inside the Quonset hut. The spraying job is officially finished, but we've still got one more contract currently underway. Our John Deere 9620 and Landau 2131-23 Shank Coulter chisel are still out in the field working on that 42-acre plowing contract, and our hired worker has actually made some really good progress while we've been gone. We're now sitting at around 50% complete, so we're getting pretty close to the halfway point of that job. That contract is going to pay us roughly $50,000 once it's completely finished, which means our bank account is going to get another pretty substantial boost in the next episode. And that's going to be a pretty exciting point for this farm because we're getting closer and closer to our first ever harvest season on our own fields. We've spent the early part of this series building up our bank account, taking on contracts, testing out our equipment, and slowly getting this farm established. Now we're finally starting to reach the point where our own crops are going to become a major source of income. In the next episode, we'll finish up this plowing contract, collect that $50,000 payday, and then start looking ahead toward our first harvest here in Eldred. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps support the series and the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode as we continue turning this little farm into a mega farm.